Joining us now, U.S. Representative Bruce Westerman, Republican of the 4th Congressional District. Mr. Westerman, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here.
Let's start with Iran, because you have been perhaps more outspoken than any other member of the Arkansas, certainly on the Arkansas House.
And there may have been one on the Senate side. That's
I understand that one of the gentlemen has had some very pronounced views on Iran.
Right.
But you've been pretty firm in your decision to vote no on the treaty. Despite, well, there are a great many on the national security side that say this is our best opportunity. Obviously, you don't agree.
Right, and to be clear, it's not a treaty. It's an agreement between the administration. Right. So, yeah, I was very skeptical of the deal from the get-go. When Prime Minister Netanyahu came and did addressed a joint session of Congress, he talked about, no deal is better than a bad deal. I think we've got a bad deal. He talked very plainly to Congress, and I think to the American people who were listening there. And he talked about how in the Holocaust there were 6 million Jews that lost their lives, but there were 60 million people that died in World War II. So we didn't know all of the details on the agreement when it first came out, but the more details that we see, I think the worse this deal really is that our administration has negotiated. I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and we had about a 2-hour meeting with the Prime Minister. We also met with his political counterpart, the President of Israel, who has very differing political views from the Prime Minister, but they were both in agreement that this is a bad deal for Israel. We met with common everyday citizens, we met with generals, we met with young people serving in the IDF, and I didn't meet anybody in Israel that thought this was a good deal. And I bring that up because Israel's on the front line of this decision that we make. And Israel, they're confident they can take care of themselves. They live in this environment every day. And, I think they would love to have the U.S. on their side on this. But
it's not?
Well, if we approve this deal, I think we're leaving our best ally in the region hanging out to dry there. And they're not only our best ally in the region, they're also a thriving democracy in the region. And that was something that I really noticed in traveling around Israel. They had a security fence, but you didn't have to look at the fence to see where Israel started and where Gaza was, or where Syria and Lebanon were, or out on the West Bank. Israel has been very active in agriculture and building nice cities. The progress is easy to see in Israel. And then I'm thinking about a moment we were up in the Golan Heights and we were looking out into Syria, where there was a bombed out city there, and there were actually Islamic terrorists out there fighting each other less than a mile away from where we were on this lookout. So in the first place, I don't think we should be negotiating with terrorists, and Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world.
What's the option?
The option is to increase sanctions on Iran and to put more pressure on them. The sanctions are working. One of the things they get out of the deal that the administration has negotiated is the freeing up of $150 billion. And I know the administration says, well, some of that has to go to debt, and at the end of the day, maybe there's only $30 or $50 billion left for them to spend. But if you look at their whole economy, it's a $400 billion economy. And if you infuse that much money back into this regime, they'll be buying conventional weapons, they'll be restocking Hamas down in Gaza, they'll be restocking Hezbollah in Lebanon. And they've made no bones about it that they want to annihilate our best ally in the region, Israel. And 90% of the Israeli people live in a 5-mile by 20-mile rectangle that a nuclear weapon there would cause great damage.
Do you doubt the administration's resolve, which in this administration is only has about a year and a half remaining? But do you doubt the resolve of this administration or any subsequent administration in providing a shield or coming to Israel's defense?
Well, and I don't think Israel is asking for us to come to their defense. They've got the Iron Dome, their short-range missile defense system that...
Well, much of that the U.S. is paying for.
And partnering with them. And now they're putting in the David Sling, which is a long-range missile defense system that They feel like they can shoot down an incoming missile from maybe before it even gets into their airspace. You've got a nuclear warhead on that missile, you've still got problems when you shoot that down. But it's not just coming in by air. You could have a nuclear weapon delivered by land or by the Mediterranean Sea and just get it close enough, and you could do extreme damage. And then you start talking about proliferation of nuclear weapons in the region. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, I would expect every other country in the area that could afford or develop a nuclear weapon would be getting one. And I think it'll spread to South Korea and Japan. I don't think it'll stop with the Middle East. So this is a huge decision. Some people say it could be the biggest decision that Congress has made in the last 70 to 100 years. Only time will tell. And honestly, only time will tell what the ramifications of how this deal goes down, whether it's approved or whether it's disapproved. But I'll take my chances standing with our best ally in the region and facing the future from that perspective.
Domestic affairs. We don't have a budget.
Yeah, we do have a budget.
Well, we
passed the first budget since, I believe it was the first balanced budget that had passed since 99 or 2002, somewhere in there.
Well, we don't have a spending.
We have way too much spending, Steve, and I serve on the budget committee. Spent a huge chunk of my time when I first got into Congress going to budget committee meetings, and we actually passed a budget resolution out of the House, a budget resolution out of the Senate. We came together and agreed on that, and the president has no say in the budget. That's a function of Congress. We've got the resolution in place, which means we can do the reconciliation process, so we can get around this 60-vote cloture rule in the Senate that just is tough on us folks in the House of Representatives because we pass bills and they go over in the Senate. I've got a forestry bill that's there right now that would love to see it passed. I think it would be great for treasured natural resources. But through budget reconciliation, in the specific language there, we can vote on repeal of Obamacare, and there are several other issues that we can put in there that maybe the president won't sign it, but we do need to put bills on his desk and have him take a position on it, and then have the candidates that are running for president step up and take a position on some of these issues, because we're at a 1-to-1 GDP to debt ratio. That's where Greece was in 2008. Our $18 to $19 trillion in debt matches our $18 to $19 trillion economy. So it's serious business, and it's all in the mandatory spending. That's what's driving the cost up. There are 5 programs over there: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. You lump the other social welfare programs together, and interest on the debt. We're paying $280 billion a year in interest on the debt, and we can't find $15 billion a year to fix all of our roads and infrastructure. So, and the bad part is that number's continuing to grow. It's the bean counters in D.C. say that by 2025 it'll be $808 billion a year. That's with the current to non-existent interest rates we got. If those were to tweak up, we could see $1 trillion a year in interest on the debt, and we could see that very soon. And that's more than all the discretionary spending combined: the military, transportation, Corps of Engineers, forestry, all those things.
FAA, the works.
Yeah.
Well, what about the omnibus approach? Do you favor that?
I'm opposed to the omnibus approach. We were had made more progress this summer. There are 12 appropriation bills. We'd gotten 6 of them passed. We were working on the 7th one, which was the Department of Interior. This is when this horrible event in South Carolina happened. Nancy Pelosi was able to get an amendment on the Department of Interior bill that would essentially say you can't fly the Michigan flag in the state capitol. I find that interesting because the bear that's on the California flag was the symbol of the secessionists in, I think it was Los Angeles and maybe San Bernardino County in California during the Civil War. But, Nancy Pelosi's able to put this amendment on the Department of Interior bills, and they're saying they'll put it on every bill. I'm for working through that, solving the problem and moving on with the appropriation process, but it does have the appropriation process at a standstill right now.
Well, I mean, you had voting rights in there, too. Resumption of the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
So everybody had a bauble, or not everybody, but there were a lot of baubles that somebody wanted to hang on the tree.
Right. And I think the American people are frustrated because they see an executive branch that's overreaching. They see things like these Iran deals. They see the regulations that are being put out. You know, we could probably spend the whole time on this show talking about the negative effects in Arkansas of this implementation of the Hayes Rule and closing down a power plant in the 4th District. And it's not even based on good science. They're saying they want ozone at 65 parts per billion. Well, the monitors in Yellowstone National Park register about 72 parts per billion. We've got one that AETN monitors in Deer, Arkansas, which anybody that's been to Deer, Arkansas knows it's not an industrial complex by any means. It averages about 68 parts per billion. So EPA's putting this rule out there that's going to make it impossible for anybody to meet it. I asked them in a committee hearing if they were going to start fining God because this is autogenic ozone that's being produced naturally, and they're saying it's too high.
We have to end it there, Congressman. Yeah. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll be right back with our roundtable.